Hello, everybody. I'm Elisabeth Eide. I'm a professor of journalism studies at the Oslo Metropolitan University in Norway, in the extreme north of this planet. And I'm also a co-chair of the MediaClimate Network. We have a website called MediaClimate.net, which you can easily access. And this will be the very first podcast we are producing, actually. So this is like a new phenomenon for the website. And we're excited. Actually, I find myself in Lahore, Pakistan now, where I am lucky enough to meet with an environmental lawyer who's also a member of the Pakistan Climate Council. His name is Ahmad Rafay Alam, and he has been involved both in environmental law. He's visited the two last conference of parties, also called the COPs. And I would like to ask you first then, was there any meaningful experience for you at the COPs?
Well, I was at COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh, and we were part of the Pakistani delegation that had gone there after the 2022 floods that had devastated vast parts of Pakistan. I mean, more than 30 million people were impacted. And that summer of 22, when the floods happened, the United Nations Secretary General came and in his own words said it was one of the most unprecedented events he'd ever seen in his life. And Pakistan sort of became the poster child of the loss and damage facility argument at Sharm el-Sheikh. It was terribly exciting to be part of the team participating in that and watching the interaction between various government ministries and ministers, and not only to formulate an argument, but then to carry it out and execute it was very, very exciting. That said, COP27 and COP28 by and large failed to do what they were supposed to, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and protect the planet from burning up, as it is quickly going to do unless we fix things. So, it's mixed emotions. You're excited to be part of these large crowds and part of a team, but on a larger level, what's supposed to be happening wasn't happening. What's
the obstacles to running from knowledge to action then?
Well, look, we know what causes climate change. It's greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases, when you take something out of the ground and burn it for your fuel or your transport, it's going to produce a greenhouse gas. But we've been doing that for hundreds, thousands of years. And we have to understand that that's not just why climate change takes place. Climate change is happening. The climate crisis exists because of systems, because of drivers. Drivers like capitalism, consumerism, patriarchy, the fossil fuel economy, and consumerism. So if you want to do something about climate change, you have to dismantle these systems and replace them with things that are more equitable and more sustainable.
And that requires an informed citizenry, I think.
Indeed.
And that's why I want to ask you, how do people in Pakistan learn about climate crisis, for example?
There'll be a rain. There'll be an unexpected flood. There'll be a heat wave that destroys crops. There'll be unlivable air pollution. Over 200 children have died in Lahore because of pneumonia just this year alone, just this year in the last month and a half. And of course, pneumonia is a lung condition, but it's exacerbated by things like air pollution. So people are impacted by climate change on a daily basis. We have heat waves we'll see this summer, and I don't know how long this world will continue or Pakistan will continue with increasing temperatures and the human body unable to withstand certain levels of them. We experience this every single day. What we don't have in Pakistan is an articulation that these are all connected issues.
Exactly.
And that's where we need awareness, that all of this is happening because of these greenhouse gases, because of the way we live, because of we want to have coffee every morning to wake ourselves up. That's flown from South America over here, because we want to become billionaires for some strange reason.
But there must be more people than you who can connect these dots. Who are the rest of them? Are there any scientists available that journalists can ask?
Well, I think, yes, they are. And not just scientists, there are environmental professionals, I'll call them that in Pakistan, and plenty of them. Lots of them working in the development sector, many of them teaching, some of them working in newspapers. And look, I myself, if I am an climate activist, if I'm articulate about these things, I stand here because of those giants and what they've taught me. So there is a ecosystem almost of thought in Pakistan about climate change. It has its limitations, it's elite, it speaks in English, it speaks in neutral technocratic language, when in fact I believe it shouldn't be technical. It now needs to be moral language. We need to speak to people not in a scientific way, but in a way that they understand in their daily lives morally that what is right and wrong.
Does this go in with the politicians?
There are very few politicians who understand what climate change is in Pakistan. I think there was a moment after the floods in 2022, most recently, when we learned, for instance, there was an attribution science study conducted by Imperial College London that said that as much as 50% of the intensity of the rainfall in Pakistan that summer, and we're talking 400 to 800% over monthly averages following just a few days, was on account of the 1.1, 1.2 degrees global warming that we've experienced since the Industrial Revolution, most of which was driven by fossil fuel consumption by the global north. Now, when that argument clicked, and it did click. Our Prime Minister was speaking about it. Our Foreign Minister was speaking about it. Our Climate Minister was speaking about it. It trickled down. Even the Chief of Army Staff in Pakistan spoke about how Pakistan was a very small greenhouse gas emitter and yet was one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change. So I think there was an eye-opening moment that took place in 2022. But it needs to be wider than just that. I mean, it's absolutely true that Pakistan's a small greenhouse gas emitter and it's vulnerable. But you have to understand how that's the case, why that's the case. And even though it's a small greenhouse gas emitter, why you still need to connect the dots and say you need to improve air quality and emissions so that we have better air pollution that saves 7 to 8 years of life expectancy off of people, because that's how much people in Lahore are losing their lives on account of air pollution. So there's still these connections that need to be made, but there was an eye-opening moment in 2022.
I see here two throngs of arguments. One is on the global scale, that Pakistan is on the losing side and also not a big emitter per capita at least. On the other hand, for health reasons, there is a reason to substantially reduce the greenhouse gas emissions in Pakistan, but not for global reasons also, since it also contributes to the larger global warming?
A week before COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, our entire political elite, that's the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister at the time, and our Climate Minister, who was in the Foreign Minister's political party, were all down in Sindh in a place where they're going to be setting up coal-fired power plants. And then the next week you go to COP and you talk about a loss and damage facility. There are still serious disconnects between what our politicians have been saying at the international level and what's being done in Pakistan. And that translation to work within Pakistan is yet to be undertaken. And on many levels, it's not just the federal government of Pakistan saying things in the international arena about Pakistan's vulnerabilities and the need to have equity, global loss and damage facilities, but then to carry those actions out in Pakistan. The same time as the flood, the same summer, in September of 2022, the Pakistan Air Force put out an order of $450 million worth of fighter aircraft in a country that was asking the United Nations' first appeal for funding, flood relief funding was about $400 million. And there we are buying guns for the boys. And these things have to change. The same summer that we had the floods and when 30 million Pakistanis were displaced, the government of Punjab spent over 2 billion rupees to buy cars for senior bureaucrats. So this sort of silliness has to come to an end. We have ridiculous air pollution in all of our cities, and we talk about how Pakistan needs to, get funding for climate resilient projects. But at the same time, in every one of our cities, major amounts of money, billions of rupees are being spent on road infrastructure that only supports the automobile elite that do the congestion and the air pollution to begin with. So these dots haven't been connected at all.
No, I see the same thing happening at home because now we have two ongoing wars that create a lot of media attention, the Israeli bombardments of Gaza and also the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And nobody is measuring this as part of the climate crisis, I think. At least the contribution is not measured so much. I know the world, the military-industrial complex, they contribute to about 6% of the total emissions. So that's already a lot.
Let's not be equivocal about it at all. War is an immense greenhouse gas emitter. And things that happen around war, for instance, the explosion of the Nord Stream gas stream, is a full-out ecocide, if you think about it. And the parties responsible for it should be made accountable for it as well. And what's happening in Gaza, the genocide that's happening in Gaza, is a forced relocation of people so that the Israelis may lay claim to the gas fields that are within Gazan jurisdictions. This is all connected to natural resources. It's all connected to fossil fuel consumption. And what we're not seeing are, this 1.5 and 2 degrees of global warming that we talk about aren't threshold levels. They're not